What, you have a podcast?
Really?
Computer, show the historical documents.
This is an ABC News special report.
This is an NBC News special report.
An update now to that breaking news story out of Lewiston, Maine, just north of Portland. Authorities are working on an active shooter situation at 3 separate locations. Authorities now say there are more than 10 dead with dozens more injured. The shooting began at a local bowling alley, followed by reports of shots fired at a local bar and a Walmart distribution center.
All right, now the latest on this breaking news out of Maine, where as right now, 16 people confirmed dead, dozens injured in a pair of mass shootings.
Stay with us. We have some new reporting. NBC News can confirm 22 dead in this shooting in Lewiston, Maine. 3 locations police are investigating, and 55 to 60 people injured.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Recovery from Politics Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Frame, and today is Saturday, October 28th, 2023. It's the first time we're doing one of these. I've got a whole lot of segments lined up, and we're going to play them one at a time. Some of them are going to run long, so this is going to be like a compiled thing instead of a full thing. And this isn't even as long as it could be because I came up with this idea in the middle of the week. I really wasn't doing what I wanted to. There was not enough hours in the day to do what I wanted to. So I decided I'd do a little bit each day, still be able to cover the news, and then put out a weekly thing. And if you're looking at this, it's being posted on Sunday because nobody else posts on Sunday. So hopefully that'll help those people like myself who are dying for new content on that day. So the first thing I want to talk about, though, is the shooting that was happening in Maine. It happened once again. Luckily, it's over. The person who perpetrated these acts was found dead. I haven't seen how he died. I just know that the police aren't claiming responsibility for it, so that's something. Usually they're really big on that. They're like, and this person here is the hero who ended it. Like, they love the good guy with a gun thing. So anytime they get to sell that, they're usually right on with it, but they didn't have that this time. So this time it happened in a small town. I think that's important. Urban cities get a lot of attention from the right-wing media, Fox News and all them. They love to talk about how horrible San Francisco is or whatever. Yet most of these shootings happen in places you never heard of. Aurora, Colorado, Sandy Hook, Connecticut, Uvalde, Texas. They don't usually happen there. So this epidemic that we're seeing of weapons of war on our streets that anybody can get, it doesn't seem to be a thing. And I'm really pissed off about it because this guy had all the red flags in the world that you could possibly want. But as Stephen King put today, I think in the New York Times, he just posted a little thing, only like 4 paragraphs, very short. But he posted that it's extremely frustrating and sad because nothing's going to be done. Even if the state of Maine got their act together and passed a red flag law of some time, the way the current Supreme Court is made up, it's probably going to get struck down. It won't take effect. So it's extremely frustrating and sad about it all. And it's like, well, what can you do? Especially considering our brand new speaker, Mike Johnson, who I didn't get to, I wanted to talk about him, but he's an asshole. He doesn't think there's anything we can do. He thinks, the problem with all these school shootings is because there are too many gays in school and not enough guns, believe it or not. Not enough God. He wants to bring prayer back into schools and everything else, and he thinks that'll stop that problem. But this didn't happen in a school. This happened with an adult about my age who served in the United States Army, who knew what he was doing, and also spent a few weeks at a mental institution over the summer, where he openly said, I'm hearing voices and they're telling me to kill. Like, this guy was able to buy all the firearms he needed after that. And I'm like, there'd be something about it. And of course, the right's going to go ahead and point to the fact that, yes, obviously this guy had some screws loose. See, the problem isn't the guns, it's the mental health of the people. Okay, fine, but they're not going to do anything about that either because they've had the opportunity to do that. Okay, these shootings were happening. The Las Vegas shooting happened under Donald Trump as president when they had Republican House, Republican Senate, Republican president, and we all know the makeup of the Supreme Court. If he wanted to, if it was a priority for Republicans to pass a mental health thing, they would have done it. And the only reason I can think that they don't want to do it is, first off, that's kind of free healthcare and they're against that on its own. But the other is that gets rid of their scapegoat. Because what happens if the Republicans got their shit together and they were serious about it and they're like, this mental health problem is real, and they went ahead and they passed a real no shit, like honest to God, good faith effort to stop guns getting in the hands of mentally challenged individuals, right? The ones that are hearing voices, the ones with a history of violence. If we really did that, and then the shootings still kept happening, they don't have their scapegoat anymore. They can't say, oh, well, it's mental problems. No. You addressed that. Remember when you did the thing? So they can't get rid of it. That's their scapegoat. That's their safety key. That's their hide behind. It's kind of what the Democrats do all the time, only, they do it well. Well, shucks, the Senate, we got that filibuster. We can't pass that bill. We need more Democrats. You need to donate more money and you need to get 60 of us in here or nothing's going to happen. And it's all bullshit. So my heart goes out. I think the official number is 18. It went as high as 22 at some point. And dozens of people injured. Those people's lives are just fucking ruined. How do you go to a bowling alley or a bar or anywhere again? Tom Nichols did make a good point. He's like, you shouldn't call this terrorism because we don't know the reason. In order to be terrorism, you need an inherently political act to be involved. Like, it has to be political. Like, you can't just go scare people. Like, okay. that doesn't work that way. And I agree with him. We need to use the right words because we have to define these things the way they're supposed to. Hate crime is different from a terrorism crime. And also our legal system changes things based on that. So we need to be very careful with how we define things. But this was a deranged individual who somehow could get access to weapons given to our soldiers when they go overseas to murder as many other human beings as humanly possible. And yet anyone on the street can go buy one. I could go buy one right now. I am a straight white male. I have no criminal record whatsoever. Nothing would stop me. And I could. And I think that's wrong. I really do. Even though I have nothing. It's like, what on earth? I mean, wouldn't it bring you pause if somebody, imagine you're a gun owner or a gun seller, right? You have a little gun stand and you've got all your guns. Somebody comes in and is like, yeah, I need an AR-15 now. And the law allows that. Like, wouldn't that send off red flags to you? Like, if somebody's like, hey, I need a rocket launcher now, within the hour. Like, I got... What for? Right? Like, this should be a huge red flag to people. Yet, for some reason, in our country, the Second Amendment holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts. And it's been misinterpreted multiple times over the years. 100 years ago, the Second Amendment didn't mean what it means today. Self-defense is not anywhere in the Constitution. It is implied because of this bullshit originalist take that the Supreme Court has given us. But even then, it's like, we obviously have limits on weapons. You can't buy a grenade. You can't. I couldn't. I can't go out right now and go buy a grenade. Are there ways of acquiring one? I'm sure there's a permit, there's a course, there's some kind of training or whatever. Like, there are engineers who routinely buy dynamite for their work, where they maybe work in a quarry or something. So that there are ways to acquire these things, but obviously it's regulated. You can't go buy a nuke, and that's an extreme, of course. But it just proves that there are certain things. I mean, even here in Alabama, the knife rules are pretty lax. Yet for some reason, you can't have a machete hidden. You can have one, you can walk around with one, but you can't have it hidden where people can't see it, which I find odd, but whatever. So there are limits on this. I think the assault weapons ban is just a rational thing to do. But I'm pretty sure if the state of Maine, if the federal government finally did something, the Supreme Court would strike it down. So yeah, it's very frustrating, and the only thing you can do is just wonder, like, is this it? And unfortunately, as soon as I saw the number and I saw that it wasn't all a bunch of elementary school kids, I was like, yeah, no, sorry, if it's not as bad as Sandy Hook. I mean, because remember, Sandy Hook was over 20 kids. Again, if elementary school, kindergartners, first, second graders, over 20 of them. And we didn't do anything about it. So, as far as I'm concerned, the gun issue is dead. You have to pay attention in primaries. You have to somehow find a Republican who believes that, yeah, these weapons of war shouldn't be out there. Good luck with that. And unfortunately, it has to be your number one issue, even if you're a Republican. So good luck with that. It's not going to happen anytime soon. I don't see it changing anytime soon. The Supreme Court is the way it is, and I think the Democratic Party is way too weak to combat it. So, yeah, this is the law of the land. It's the price of freedom here in the United States. I think that price is too high. Who am I?
Democratic voters want to see someone challenge President Joe Biden for the party's nomination in 2024. Well, now Democratic Congressman Dean Phillips is giving people their wish. He's telling our...
So in this segment, what I'd like to talk about is Dean Phillips. He's one of the new names in the news this week because as of me recording this, he just announced his candidacy for the 2024 presidential election for the Democratic Party, which means he's not going to be running on a third-party ticket or as an independent. He specifically ruled those out. He said absolutely no way. His goal is merely to defeat Trump, and that's what he's worried about. He thinks Biden isn't getting the job done for numerous reasons. Most of us have never heard of this guy prior to this week. I myself am one of them. The Atlantic just did a huge piece on him, one-on-one interview, and then he also did a podcast recently that I looked up with Steve Schmidt on his thing. Both of those will be linked in the show notes. And I just found out a few things that I think automatically he's not going anywhere. This guy's not going to win. I mean, okay, there's a lot that can happen between now and Super Tuesday. This just... But you know, barring that happening, barring the world come crashing down on Biden, I don't think he's going to gain much traction. And really, it's mostly for, you know, this particular part of the interview in the Atlantic that says, quote, "He's a centrist, unhappy with what he sees as the party's coddling of the far left. He's a Gen Xer, convinced that the party's aging leadership is out of step with the country. He's an industrialist, worried about the party's hostility toward big business." End quote. That is everything the Democratic base hates wrapped up in a ball of stupid. This guy is a centrist. What the country needs right now is not a centrist. We have one. His name's Joe Biden. We don't need an industrialist. We have one. His name is Joe Biden. We don't need somebody who coddles the far left. We have one. His name is Joe Biden. Like, the only thing that this guy has going for him is he isn't the same generation as Joe Biden, and he thinks that the aging leadership is out of step with the country. That part he's correct, but everything else he's dead set wrong. The country doesn't need another Democrat running as a centrist. We have one. His name is Joe Biden. And, you know, this just, like, doesn't seem to be the thing. He's one of those people, he thinks one of the problems, this was brought up in the interview with Steve Schmidt. He thinks one of the problems with the country is that we don't have enough bipartisanship. Which just tells me he's another one of those idiot Democrats who sees the polls and then actually believes them. So, in case you're new, every single poll ever taken ever says that voters want more bipartisanship. They want it. And it's overwhelming. It's like 70-80% of the country thinks what the problem is that the two sides of the political spectrum don't come together and work together enough. Now, first off, again, you want bipartisanship. His name is Joe Biden and he's already in office. And I don't know how much else you can do, because if you live in reality, you do realize that the Democrats, for all their flaws, are the adults in the room. And the Republicans, I mean, it just took them 3 weeks to get a speaker, and we'll get to him later. They're a mess. You don't negotiate with them. They don't even know what the hell they want. They're all over the place. So that's one problem, is that he just assumes everybody, if we could just get together and sing Kumbaya. Now, the country is extremely divided. I don't think Biden is working hard enough to fix it. I don't think he's the right guy for that. He was the right guy in 2020 to win against Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was a raving fucking lunatic, still is, and Joe Biden represented a return to normalcy, a return to a time where it didn't matter who the president was. You could literally skip the front section of the newspaper, go straight to your sports and your comics, and feel relatively okay that the world wasn't going to end on his watch. Whereas with Donald Trump, we literally had a couple days there where we thought nuclear war between North Korea was a very real thing, and it all started because Trump suddenly had a dick-waving contest with Kim Jong-un. Like, that's never happened before. We've come close, but usually it was over, like, a serious thing, like nukes in Cuba, and the idea that we could start nuclear war because these two are having a Twitter flameout is just nuts. So Joe Biden was the obvious choice in 2020. I don't think he's going to win in 2024, barring something shocking, because he has not actually done the job that he was put in to do. He was not meant to be a steward of the country. He thinks that's what his job is. I'm here to be the normal president for, now he thinks, 8 years, and everyone will calm down and breathe again. And I'm pretty sure his relationships in the Senate are what are coloring his current ideology and philosophy of all we have to do is outlast Donald Trump, and then everybody will go back to normal. He's massively underappreciating the destructiveness that Trump has brought. Trump has taken the mask off and revealed the Republican Party is filled with a shit ton of white supremacist Christian nationalists who are hell-bent on destroying this country. Look around, okay? There's plenty of evidence to support this. Whereas if the left wins, oh God, we all get free healthcare in college. If the right wins, there will be camps. Camps. Like, I'm pretty sure there will be camps. And people will be killed. There are plenty of them saying that out loud, and they're not going to stop. They're never going to find the last one and be like, finally, we found the last transgender person to murder. And then be satiated by that. They'll have to find something else. Okay, the line is very clear. This is, yeah, anyway, this guy is just all kinds of wrong. He doesn't understand the issue that's going on. One of my main problems I have with any interview of somebody on the right or center, like this guy's trying to be, is they always complain, oh, Joe Biden coddles the far left, and he's done too much for the far left. And no one in the middle of the interview ever interrupts that person. Is like, wait, stop. Give me an example. No one ever asks for an example. Tell me where Joe Biden coddled the left and you wouldn't have. Now, I've asked the ether of the internet about this a few times, and the only thing that ever comes back that is even slightly coddling-ish is usually the student loan debt forgiveness. Okay? And I would argue, yeah, that is pretty pandering. That was a pander, not a coddle. But it's also kind of wishy-washy because Chuck Schumer, of all people, was on Twitter begging the president to do it. He did it. The courts immediately struck it down, which most of us thought they would. And then you notice he stopped. Like, Joe Biden didn't keep fighting for it. You could tell it was a pander because he didn't believe in it. If he really believed in it, he would have kept going. And I'll give you an example. Donald Trump, one of the first things he did was his Muslim ban, right? And the courts immediately struck it down and was like, whoa, 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 this is too racist even for us. Like, you've got to slow your roll. Now, if he was just pandering to his base, if he didn't really believe in it, he would have stopped right there, threw up his hands, and done what Joe Biden's doing, which is, well, the courts have ruled, I must abide by the courts. We have a 3-tiered system here in the United States of checks and balances, and I have been checked, and the world is balanced. That's not what Trump did. Trump rewrote the bill, his Muslim ban, in just a little tiny way. He narrowed it so that way it could go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would back it. Because the Supreme Court just needs deniability. Right? They just need to be able to say, apologies, construction, but the Supreme Court just needs the ability to say, okay, look, it's not that racist. It's kind of like what's going on down here in Alabama right now. Alabama submitted a map. It immediately got sued for gerrymandering because, yeah, it's fucking crazy. They definitely wrote the map in such a way to negate or minimize the black vote of the state of Alabama. So right now, I think it's like about a quarter of the state is, black. But for some reason, out of all the congressional maps, they only have one majority black district. And you've seen these maps. They're crazy. They're all kinds of crazy shapes and everything to do it. Well, they did it in such a way. They sent it to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, whoa, that's some racist shit. You can't do that. Well, Alabama's currently telling the Supreme Court to fuck off because they just keep redrawing the map and they're narrowing it in such a way that eventually they are going to send it to the Supreme Court. It's still going to be gerrymandered as fuck, but they have to give the Supreme Court that air of legitimacy, that little snigget, tiny nugget of like, no, we're not really racist. Look, they have to give them a way out. So eventually Alabama's going to draw a map that's going to work for the Supreme Court that accomplishes the same thing. The black vote will be cut off, but eventually the Supreme Court will be like, okay, look, it's not that racist, and they'll pass it. This is what happens when you really believe in something. When you're a president or a political party and you want something done, this is how you do it. You ram through whatever you want. Yes, the courts are going to balk. They usually do unless they're really corrupt, and we're almost there, but not quite. So they're going to go ahead and do it. But then when the courts reject it, you don't give up, right? That's if you don't really believe in your cause. That's if you're pandering. Trump was never pandering. The state of Alabama isn't pandering. They want a majority white state and for the black vote to be significantly diminished. So they're going to keep sending over and over again another map until finally the Supreme Court's like, whew, cool. See, it's not that racist. Even the black guy on the court voted for it. And that's what's going to happen. So when it comes to the student loan thing, yeah, he's pandering. That's not coddling. Okay. Joe Biden never believed in the student loan debt forgiveness program. He's done nothing but weaken it over and over again and not fight it in the courts. And as soon as the courts, he gave up. Okay, you can see it in his own Justice Department. They're not fighting it anymore. It's a non-issue. And the only thing it turned into is another thing that the Democrats can go ahead and put on an email and say, donate! We need more Dems! So, I'm always pissed off at these interviews because one guy after another, especially with the Republicans, Chris Christie and all them, when they do an interview, they're, the inevitable question, what is Joe Biden doing that you hate that makes you think you have to be president, right? And it's usually the same thing. Oh, he supports the far left too much. No one ever pushes back on this and is like, can you give me an example? I want to see. Where, right? Because he didn't support the Green New Deal. That's still sitting somewhere in AOC's desk. That's not happening. The most we got out of it was electric car manufacturing, which, okay, but that's infrastructure, and what was he supposed to do with that money? Like, I don't get it. We're still drilling oil like crazy. I know the Republicans just passed some weird energy bill that actually does the opposite of what they think it does. But he's not coddling the far left. He's still drilling for oil in places we don't want to. He's still pro-business. Like, that's another thing. This guy's like, he's an industrialist worried about the party's hostility toward big business. And I'm like, that proves you have no idea. That is the one unifying thing. Go look at Bernie Sanders. Go look at Donald Trump. Again, the people want a flamethrower right now. They want somebody in there who, if you're not going to fix things, you're going to burn it the fuck down. Like, everyone agrees, I think, up here in the cloud, like our own little metaphorical cloud, the American people all agree that corporations have way too much power and way too much money, and it's not trickling down, it's not coming down to us. We are not getting the benefits of the supposed deal that we were sold way the fuck back in the 80s, when even Herbert Walker Bush was like, it's voodoo economics, it's not real. This idea that the rich, if only we give them a few more billions, will share it with us. Like, that is a bogus bullshit argument. The American people are waking up to it, and Trump is weaponizing that feeling that, like, man, things aren't right. I don't get it. But you know what? The Democrats aren't helping me, and the Republicans aren't helping me, so I'm going to vote for the guy who's going to burn it all down. And we saw a little bit of this with Bernie Sanders as well, only he wasn't arguing for burning it down. He was arguing for actual change. He got shit canned because the Democratic Party is all about maintaining the status quo. Hence also why they went with Hillary, why they went with Joe Biden. There were plenty of other people on those stages who could have done the same job, but probably wanted a little change. But again, Joe Biden was not elected to effect change. He was elected to maintain the status quo. He's done that very well. I mean, he's done what he was set out to do. This guy, Dean Phillips, I don't really get what he's worried about. Like, okay, if his goal is the re-election of Donald Trump, if that's what he's fighting against, which is his stated goal, he wants to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get re-elected. And he's going to do that by running against Joe Biden, the only Democrat who's defeated him. Now, I don't get that. But it does make you wonder. It's like, what does this guy see? The party's coddling of the far left. I don't see it. I don't see it in policy. So where else has he coddled or pandered to the far left? Well, I do know that a lot of people, consider the far left with the squad. What are the squad? Minority women for the most part. Okay, so it's minorities and everything else. And ultimately, I do believe that race is playing a larger part to this than anybody ever thought about for a second. When people complain about Joe Biden's age, we're not really complaining about his age, because every president has been old as fuck. Any one of them can die at any moment. I mean, I recall Barack Obama, since he was the first black president, there was a legit fear the man was going to have assassination attempts against him very quickly and very often. We were lucky that didn't happen. But we also know that nobody really worried about it in regards to the presidency itself. Joe Biden was a capable hand, right? We didn't worry about it. The only time we've really worried about it was McCain's running mate, Sarah Palin. Sorry for blanking there for a moment. But we all knew she was crazy, and we didn't want that. And that, I do think, hurt him. I think that was the death knell for his thing, was when she was revealed to be an empty suit. So, but every other time, you didn't really worry about it, man. Vice presidents, who cared? George Bush had Dick Cheney, and, we all think he pretty much ran the presidency anyway. So if George Bush suddenly kicked it, we wouldn't have cared. Clinton had Gore. Everybody's vice president. Nobody really cared until the vice president wasn't a white man. And now all of a sudden, we're overly concerned with Joe Biden's age, but not Donald Trump, who's only 3.5 years younger. And if you had to ask me, is failing the eye test, if you wanted to question senility or who's lost a few miles on their fastball, it's Donald Trump. And I think anyone objective would agree with that and say, yes, clearly, if you put the two side by side, you'd be like, yeah, the one with the orange hair and the fake tan, definitely, he should not be president. And if I had to pick one just strictly based off of mental acuity, I think an objective person would overwhelmingly support Joe Biden, right? It's not a question. But why are we questioning Joe Biden, but we're not questioning Donald Trump? I think the answer is very simple. Joe Biden has a black woman as his vice president. That's all it is, right? Most of us agree that a president doesn't really act alone. He's got dozens of advisors and people who communicate with him throughout the day. We all know there are safeguards. We saw these firsthand when Trump was president. he would give an order and his generals would either flat out fucking ignore it, which is worrying on its own merits, or they would steer him a certain way. There was a lot of that going on for all the shit we give those people who actually think, hey, if I'm close to this person, I can do it. It is possible to affect that change. I actually complain about Biden doing that with Bibi right now. That's a different topic, but, you know, But as far as coddling and pandering, it was always very clear to me that Kamala Harris was a pander to his base. Okay, there was a deal behind closed doors with black congressmen, and it was, we'll swing our support behind you, we'll get Buttigieg and Klobuchar to drop out and name you, but you got to give us something in return, and in return he gave them Kamala. So that always seemed to me to be pandering, especially considering, you know, whenever Biden spoke about the other people on the stage with him at that time, he always had glowing reports about Pete Buttigieg. He even went so far as to compare him to his son, and we knew which son he was talking about when he did that. You know, here was Pete Buttigieg, who's basically a younger version of Joe Biden. Possibly smarter, I'm not sure, but he's definitely more educated, and I mean, the guy knows multiple languages and all this stuff. Like, he's not stupid. Say what you want about Buttigieg, he ain't dumb. And he's an extremely good communicator. And for me, I was sitting here going, you know, I've never believed in the, pick somebody who makes up for your weaknesses kind of a thing to balance out the ticket kind of a deal. I always thought you should pick somebody who mirrors what you believe and run with it. So for my money, I was always like, Pete Buttigieg is the natural choice for vice president. He's basically Joe Biden younger. And I think Joe Biden originally wanted that, but the deal was presented to him from the black community in Congress. Basically, we'll give you our support, which will seal South Carolina for you and lead up to Super Tuesday so you can just sweep and win. But you got to give us something. So if you had to ask me, I think Kamala Harris was a pander. But that's not coddling to the far left. Kamala Harris is a centrist just like Joe Biden. Like, it would have been pandering to the far left if he decided Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or even AOC or one of the squad were his vice president. That would have been pandering to them. But Kamala Harris was strictly by race, so you do have to wonder about, like, who's he really pandering to? And you have to understand that when people complain about things in Washington, it's all done in code, especially through politicians. Dean Phillips can't come out and say Kamala Harris was only chosen because she was black. That would destroy his candidacy straight up. He can't be that honest. So he has to couch his words. Oh, he's coddling the far left. Well, then you have to wonder, what's he think of Ketanji Brown Jackson, Supreme Court nominee? Joe Biden's had one opportunity to nominate someone to the Supreme Court, and he chose a black woman. I don't think that's an accident. I think Joe Biden did choose her, again, to balance out the court. And, you know, honestly, if you had to say, Kyle, is there a good time to change the racial makeup of government? I would say the Supreme Court's a yes, considering, what is it, like 7 out of 9 of them are all Catholic, and most of them are males. Most of them are white males. Like, there's a thing going on there that's a little disturbing. I find the fact that this nation has trouble electing a Catholic as president, but is totally okay with the majority of the Supreme Court being made up by them, I think it's a little questionable. And we can blame the Federalist Society for most of that. But it is something you have to wonder. In the 2 times that President Biden has been able to really affect historical change, it's where he elevated 2 black women to positions of power and authority. Because policy-wise, let's be honest, Joe Biden is not of the far left. He has not coddled the far left. He's actually governing the way we all thought he would. Very, very central. And he's tried so hard to, like, be bipartisan and everything else. And so for me, I think it's code. When you ask, when you say, I'm a centrist and I'm mad that Joe Biden is coddling the far left, I mean, I have to sit here and wonder, is this just code for you saying you don't like how many black people he's elevated? Maybe? Like, there was this article that came out around the first impeachment of Donald Trump, and it was comparing the times between this impeachment and the last time we had a real impeachment, which was Nixon. right? And in Nixon, you had his own party willing to throw him under the bus. They were all like, yeah, we'll just roll the dice with Ford. We'll impeach your ass. Like, we don't care. And they went to Nixon and they told him, you don't have the votes. You're about to get impeached and removed. We're going to do it. But for some reason, even though one could argue the case against Trump was even stronger and maybe even more egregious, he was able to stay on. He had very partisan support. His own party fought tooth and nail. Not once any of his defenders actually saying he was innocent. They just all couched their argument in, well, this is a witch hunt. It's really not that big a deal. Not one of them ever said Donald Trump is innocent of this extortion scheme with Ukraine. And all they got for their trouble was Mitt Romney being the only person to vote against him. So, you know, the question was brought up, how come Nixon was able to get bipartisan support to oust him, but for the most part, the Republican Party is 100% behind Donald Trump. And they made the argument, and I have to agree, that back then, both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party both were the party of the straight white male. The policies differed, but at the end of the day, both of them were promoting policies that would support straight white men maintaining power. Now that dichotomy has changed. Don't know if I'm using that word right. Sorry. Now you have the Republican Party, which is very much the party of the straight white male. Like, you can't argue otherwise. It's not the party of women. It's not the party of minorities. It's not the party of LGBTQ. Like, no, they are straight white male all the way down. If you support the Republican Party, you are supporting the straight white male hierarchy for the rest of your life. Like, that's just what they mean now. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party today and over the last couple decades has been the party of minorities, has been the party of inclusion, has been the party of we want to lift up the minorities. And of course, the right says, well, they want to lift up the minorities at the expense of the straight white male. So you do have to wonder, when somebody says, I'm a centrist and I'm mad of all the coddling of the far left. And again, who is the far left? Right now in Congress, that is the squad, mostly colored women. Educated. Some of them not even like natural born citizens of the United States. Some of them from outside. Not Christian. Not all of them are Christian. So, I don't know, because you can't argue it's policy. There's no policy. You can't argue that he's coddling the far left. Okay, well, if you argue Joe Biden coddles the far left, and we know the far left is represented by the squad, well, there are members of the squad right now who are pro-Palestine, and Joe Biden just smacked them down in a recent speech saying now's not the time for that. I mean, he called them out by name and is only now barely kind of sort of being, hey, let's not kill so many Gazans. They're just civilians. Like, slow your roll, Israel. Like, he's just barely saying that. So it isn't policy. I don't see how he's coddling any of them. I do think it's code at this point. You have to consider it. It can't just be dismissed. Now, I don't think Dean Phillips is a racist, but where he comes from, the man is a multimillionaire. He's got over $50 million in the bank. Okay? This guy has always been wealthy. This guy has always been successful. He is a straight white male. His world is skewed. Of course, he doesn't want to be against big business because he is from big business. Okay, this guy would have fit in perfectly in Reagan's 80s Republican Party. He would have been perfect for it. And he would have fit in perfectly during Clinton 90s, when Clinton transformed the Republican or Democratic Party into a more corporate party. But right now, he's kind of stuck. He has to run as a Democrat, and because of that, it's so baffling to me, like, so, I just really want to emphasize this point, and I've done it before. Poll after poll shows that American voters overwhelmingly want bipartisanship. That's all they scream. Bipartisanship, bipartisanship, bipartisanship. However, not once, when your party's in charge, be it Republican or Democrat, when that party just rams its agenda through, totally partisan, one-sided, not even one vote of the other side, not one of those voters who screamed for bipartisanship ever turns on their own party and says, oh, this is bullshit right here. They didn't even ask the Democrats what they wanted. That person does not exist. American people love it because it sounds good, right? It really does. It sounds great when you say, yeah, let's all work together. Sounds good. In reality, not a single voter has changed their vote because of it. No one in 2008 voted because they wanted more bipartisanship, supported and then voted for Obama and all the Democrats, and then got mad when the Democrats had to pass their agenda without a single Republican vote. That person just doesn't exist. They don't get punished for this. So I'm sorry if he says, oh, the problem is we don't have enough bipartisanship. I'm like, well, one, fucking look around. Okay, most of what Joe Biden has passed has been bipartisan. So slow your roll. But secondly, like, what do you think would change if we all work together? What are you willing to work together with them on? That's another thing that never gets brought up. Not only do they never give an example of all these times that Joe Biden has coddled the left or listened to them too much, they never offer up examples of something they thought, Joe Biden didn't try hard enough to get Republican votes on this. I would love to see that. Please, give me an opportunity. Give me a journalist who will push back and ask those questions. Every time they say he coddles the far left, cool, give me an example. Anytime they say, oh, we don't have enough bipartisanship, cool, show me a time Joe Biden did not try to get bipartisan votes. Please. Show me a time where he passed a bill into law that you thought he didn't try hard enough to get Republicans for, and what you would have done differently. But those questions never come out. It's just an empty thing because it sounds good and it gets votes going. Like, I don't imagine that Dean Phillips is a dumb person. Here's what I think is going on. These are the words that he is hearing when he does his town halls and his meetings and when he goes and talks to the regular folk. I think his own voters are the ones giving this back to him, and he's just parroting it back, right? I'm pretty sure it's his voters who say this shit and then don't back it up with any evidence or facts, or he doesn't push back and be like, hey, wait a sec, you said he coddles the far left too much, right? When? Because it doesn't exist. So it's got to be bullshit. It's either code or it's bullshit or both. I'm leaning towards code. And again, I'm not necessarily thinking Phillips is doing this. I think he's just parroting back what he's hearing from people. And he, because he's a politician, doesn't push back on voters. This is a huge problem, and he talks about it in his thing with Steve Schmidt. He's like, oh, it's so disappointing and frustrating to work with these Republicans who behind closed doors admit everything you think, but then they won't come out and say the truth. Dean Phillips doesn't say the truth either. When faced with his voters, he doesn't push back on them. He just listens quietly, and then he parrots back their bullshit. Now, there's a lot that can happen between now and March 6th. I don't see this guy doing much. Really. He might get, for a little while, just because he's the new kid on the block, I might see him get as high as 25% for like a week. But then his numbers will drop the more people hear about him and realize he's very milquetoast and boring. Like, honestly, I think if somebody wanted to run against Biden and have a legit shot, they should be more of the flamethrower caucus. For the left, though. They should be more like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders and be like, look, I know what's really wrong with this country. The corporate elites are stealing from you all, and they're the ones that are fucking this shit up. Elect me, and we'll go kick their ass. But no one's saying that. Trump ain't saying it. Biden ain't saying it. Nobody's saying it. Like, that's the real problem that's going on. That's what's broken in America, is the corporate elites have way too much power over everything. Media, entertainment, our politics. Okay, the average lobbyist over in Washington, D.C. makes over $500,000 per year. And they write the fucking laws. They make more than our congressmen do. That's a problem. But this guy's just another rich white guy. I don't think he's going to get elected. And quite honest, there's another reason I don't think he's going to get elected. I've only recently, if you saw my side note just a few days ago, I've only recently become acquainted with the anti-Semitic left, and it is a very real thing. Dean Phillips is Jewish. I don't think he's going to get very far. I haven't heard him say anything about Israel versus Palestine right now. If I had to guess, he's going to stay very quiet on that and not talk about it if he doesn't have to. It would be surprising if he came out and said anything other than Biden's doing a great job. Like, he's not going to come out and say anything controversial about it. But the anti-Semitic left does exist. There's a difference between supporting Palestine and supporting terrorism. And unfortunately, there is a significant portion. I thought the right was blowing it up, but I've met these people. They are real, that they support terrorism. They think that what is happening over in Gaza is so bad that terrorism is totally fine. And they believe that there's no such thing as civilians over there. That, they're all military assets and you can go kill men, women, children, all you want. And that's just too far. So I think this guy, his ceiling is probably a quarter of the electorate. And I think that's going to die pretty quick. The more people find out about him. But then also, it's going to be that momentum thing. Once Biden beats him in New Hampshire and then a few other states, it's going to be the inevitability thing. And then everybody just leaves this guy and starts voting for Biden. So I don't think he's going very far. But he is a new voice. He deserves our attention. We should pay attention to him. But, I mean, I don't think this guy's going to do anything. If anything, I mean, it's kind of like over the Republican side. You wonder, why are all these guys running when they know Trump's the nominee, right? Especially at this point. Like, Trump has he's the overwhelming favorite. He's going to be the nominee. So there's two possibilities. One, they really do believe that either justice or human nature will kick in and he will die or be locked up, and that will be the end of his campaign. So they're just hoping to pick up the scraps. Or two, they're really all running for vice president. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the back of his mind that he won't admit that in reality, he's hoping to do just well enough in a few of the early states and maybe on Super Tuesday to get Biden to drop Kamala Harris. Because she is the vice president right now. She's not the official running mate until the Democratic convention. That is when both the president and the vice president are selected by the party. Usually it's like a paperwork thing. It's not even a big deal. But I could see a scenario where this Phillips guy is thinking, I can elevate my profile, become the vice president. Biden croaks. Ta-da, I'm president. I could see that, where he's trying to sell himself as an alternative. Because I just don't get how intelligent people can be so damn stupid. Yes, what we need is more centrism. No. No. And it's not even centrism. I don't believe he is a centrist. He's center-right, at best. He's an old-school Republican. The window has shifted. But he's... this guy's not going anywhere. I don't buy it. I'll be very interested if he even makes it to Super Tuesday. Because right now, all his eggs are in one basket, and that's New Hampshire. He's hoping that because Biden pissed off New Hampshire electorate so badly that he can gain some traction there. And if he wins big there, then, we can do some things. I don't buy it. The window's very short. And like I said, this guy's just he's not offering up really a difference. Like, again, he says he's a centrist. We have one. That's Joe Biden. He says Joe Biden's coddling the far left. I'm like, no, Biden isn't. Biden is doing what you were doing. The only thing he agrees at is that he's of a different generation, and this generation currently in office doesn't understand the country. I would agree, but he doesn't understand the country either. He's offering the exact same thing that Joe Biden is. So, yeah. We'll find out more about this guy in the coming weeks. We'll see if he's got any legs. One thing that is interesting that I haven't verified, but I did see on social media, was that Harlan Crow, the guy who's been bankrolling Clarence Thomas all this time with free vacations and such, is one of the big financial backers behind him. So that has to tell you something. Now, it could be very benign and that Harlan Crow sees him, like I do, as pro-business centrist. That's a win for Harlan Crow, right? It would amaze me if he didn't vote for this guy, if he didn't give him money. But it should give you pause that somebody as corrupt and fucked up as that guy is giving money to this one. So, anyway, so what does this
blood and soil, you will not replace us.
Images have in common with this?
Palestine, from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea. Palestine will be free.
Surprisingly, a lot. Words and phrases can be problematic at best, okay? I long argued that I thought defund the police was a terrible slogan. It just is. It's a shit slogan, okay? Now, I'm an intelligent person. I can do the research. I can watch all the videos. I can read all the books on how actually defund the police is just a, short phrase for what they actually mean is, well, we want to redistribute the money that is currently going to police, who everyone agrees are probably getting way too much funding and military equipment. And we want to redistribute some of that money to social programs that will actually help people instead of have them killed. I get that. But unfortunately, we live in this world where everyone's got a different definition for fucking everything, okay? So defund the police is villainized on the right as they just want to eliminate the police. Aren't those libs fucking crazy? And the people on the left have to constantly sit and explain themselves. If you are explaining your slogan, you're already losing. Okay, that's just a fact in American politics and politics everywhere. If you have to stop and explain it, you're losing. Now, I go ahead and I like to also know the origination of things. Where did these things come from? Now, when Trump was running in 2016, he borrowed a phrase from Pat Buchanan when he ran in the 90s, America First. But the problem is Pat Buchanan didn't come up with it. Pat Buchanan actually borrowed it from literal American Nazis all the way back in the 1930s, and they used that slogan, America First. So it had Nazi originations, and that should give you pause, right? That's a major thing. Like, hey, this is the same thing that Nazis said, right? Like, it totally makes sense, right? So, when Trump has to say it, we're getting the, code going on here, right? We know that America First doesn't actually mean what they say it does because we know where that phrase comes from. America First was talking about letting Hitler just do whatever the fuck he wanted over in Europe, and that the United States should actually play nice with the fascists and the dictators. Thankfully, that's not what happened. We fought him tooth and nail. We ended up winning. We can argue about the rest of it all day long, but as far as I'm concerned, a win over fascism is a fucking win, and we'll take it. Now, that's America First. There are people who marched in the Charleston Jews will not replace us bullshit chant, who actually said, oh no, actually, when I was chanting Jews will not replace us over and over again with a bunch of white males and tiki torches, what we really meant was, we just disagree on some immigration stuff, we think that people like Chuck Schumer, and George Soros, the globalists, that they're purposefully bringing in immigrants to weaken our vote. They can try and couch it, and it almost doesn't sound too bad when they put it that way, but did anybody believe them? Like, if you heard and saw somebody chanting Jews will not replace us, do you think anything other than that motherfucker wants to kill some people? Right? So, brings me to from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I don't give a fuck what you think it stands for. Terrorists who murder kids for kicks use it. That's a problem. Again, if I'm marching down the street and all of a sudden I notice a bunch of Nazis marching with me, I stop and reevaluate what the fuck I'm actually doing. And what I can tell you right now is that everyone marching down the streets like, yay, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It sounds really cool and it rhymes and I'm fucking awesome and a college student who doesn't know fucking dick about history or anti-Semitism. Hey, guess what? The wrong fucking people are using that stuff. Okay? The Palestinian Liberation Organization Authority, I don't know, they've had several different governments, PLO, PLA. Yeah. Anyway, they've been fucking using it not as a nifty little slogan that means, oh, actually what we really want is just to be treated like human beings, and we just want our own private state so we can do our thing. No. There are people who believe that because they're naive and stupid. There are literal terrorists who use that phrase. And when they say it, what they mean is, I want to kill all the Jews, and I want to destroy the nation of Israel. Just blow it up. Like, it's fucking gone. It doesn't exist anymore. The most generous thing you'll get is they'll perhaps say, oh, no, I don't want to kill all the Jews. I just want to force relocate them back to where they fucking came from. And they'll cite this bullshit 55% of them actually aren't even from here. Completely made up number, totally bogus propaganda from some bullshit. Okay? But they'll go ahead and say that. Now, the very fact that these are the type of people using this phrase should give everybody some fucking pause. Now, the sad part is, as far as I'm concerned, is that there are way too many people I found out recently who are okay with the killing of children. Okay? And it's not like in the background. There's a podcast group called Black Power Media. I used to be a fan. But they recently had Cornel West on. He's running for president. And he was there, and I thought, well, you know, in the interest of being informed, I should see what this guy has to say, right? In the middle of their conversation, he brings up, or Palestine gets brought up. And he says, you know, he doesn't support Hamas because they're killing kids. That seemed very sensible to me. The entire panel of 3 other people attacked him for that. And one of the justifications was, well, you know who those kids are going to grow up into. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, seriously? You think that's the way to go? And all I can think is, you must not have kids. Like, seriously. Because here in the United States, if you take this argument to its logical conclusion, and again, I talked previously about what Seattle DSA put out, that there's no such thing as a civilian in Israel because they're all settlers, and settlers are military assets, and therefore it's totally cool to just murder the fuck out of all of them, whether they have anything to do with it or not. By that logic, it would be totally okay by those rules for a Native American to bust into my house and slaughter my kids for fear of what they're going to become, because I'm a straight white male, they're little white boys. Sorry. I'm at least 4th or 5th generation American. I am. I mean, my parents, my grandparents were all born and raised here. I have no idea who my great-grandparents were. I never met them. I don't know their names. And as far as I know, my grandfather on his side, when he married into the family, he was like, yeah, fuck all those people I left. I have no idea where he came from or how long his family's been in this country. For all I know, his family's been here so long that they actually own slaves, which would be horrific, but it's possible. I have no idea. Yet all of a sudden, I'm going to be held account for shit that happened literally hundreds of years ago. I had no control over this. None of us do. This is all so stupid. 99%, and I'm just throwing that number around because, I mean, it's pretty factual on its own. 99% of borders and countries in this country or in this world were built on blood and genocide and bullshit, and some asshole who declared himself king just drawing on a map what land he wanted and what land he didn't. Like, none of us can control the past, and we can't control anything here. You've got people who have been living in Israel their entire lives, their parents' entire lives. There are multiple generations of people who've lived there. They didn't make the choice to fucking come here. We go ahead and we say that the dreamers should not be held to account because it was their parents that brought them here illegally. We go ahead and, you know what? Other than a right-wing asshole, everyone's in favor of the dreamers. Everyone says, you know what? That kid, they were brought here and, it was their parents. And they have no connection at all to their former land. It would be inhumane to send them back to the country of origin that we don't know where the fuck they're from. They don't know where the fuck they're from. They don't know the language. They don't know the customs. They don't know anyone there. It would be cruel and unusual punishment to do that. And yet, if you're a Nazi, that's A-okay. So it really bothers me when there's people on the left who sit there and they'll say, oh no, it's cool, the dreamers can stay, but those Israelis, fuck them. You do realize the history of the Israeli people, of Jewish people in general. Like, they were persecuted. They were given a piece of land to go to. Not all of them at the time understood the, Zionist propaganda that was going through Europe, where, yes, I'm certain there were some white Europeans just like, yeah, we just won World War I. We got all this Ottoman Empire stuff. We should just give them some land and kick those Jews there. I'm sure there was a lot of anti-Semitism involved in that, and it's not their fault. They were told, this land is yours, you can go create a nation on your own, away from all of us anti-Semites, and you can do your thing. Who wouldn't jump on that fucking, train? Right? Like, it's not ridiculous, it's not stupid. You have to put yourself in the position of them. Holy shit, I just survived the Holocaust. I'm not staying in Germany. Like, fuck you. I'm out, but where do I go? Some of them came to the United States. That made sense. Some of them went to Israel. That also makes sense. I want to be with my people. I'm tired of being the outcast. Look, I'm not saying that the Israeli government hasn't done some fucked up shit, and Benjamin Netanyahu is king asshole of them all. Sure, and the way they're going about this is horrific. I wanted to talk about other things, because apparently there's a former prime minister of Israel who actually had a pretty good idea, an alternative to the ground invasion that currently seems like momentum is pushing them into. There are alternatives there. There's a way to do this without so much damn collateral damage. Israel, unfortunately, right now, is choosing the worst of the options, other than just straight up calling it genocide and doing it. Okay, they're cutting off the internet, they're cutting off water, they're cutting off food, they're cutting off medical supplies, they're bombing fucking hospitals. And we all know at this point that Hamas is able to do what they do because they have underground tunnels. So you really have to ask, what's the effectiveness of these air rockets that you're shooting at them? Are you really getting them, or are you just causing destruction and chaos? Because I don't think you're really hitting Hamas if that's your goal. Like, there's a legit argument to be had whether or not these airstrikes are at all effective at killing the people you're actually trying to kill, right? Like, you're not trying to kill the civilians. There is a lot of pro-Palestinian sentiment out there, and the longer this goes on, the more that's going to happen, as long as you assholes don't fuck it up and keep chanting slogans that everyone associates with murdering children, and that you're not okay with murdering children. Okay, that this isn't ridiculous, this isn't stupid, this is just, why the fuck are you okay with killing kids? Because who they might grow into? You know what I thought of immediately is one of those old medieval shows where, some guy has just killed the king, and now he's got to find the king's son because he's like, well, that boy will grow into a man, and then he'll come back and try and kill me. Fuck, never mind, that was in The Godfather. Part 2, right? The main character had to flee to America because the old mob boss over in Italy was like, well, he'll grow up and come back and kill me. Hey, surprise, he did, but that's narrative. That's a fucking movie about mobsters. That's kind of what they do, right? But that's what that reminded me of. It's like, you're really worried about kids growing up and killing you because you killed their parents. It's like, yeah, that does fucking happen. Sometimes. Like, I'm surprised the United States doesn't have more homegrown terrorists as it is now, only not of the straight white male variety, to be honest. But that's not the world we're living in right now, and the world we're living in right now is every country has blood on its hands. And you can't just move 300 million people or however many millions of people off the land because you think colonization and settlers are evil. Like, yes, those were sins of the past. We're trying to fucking do better. You can't keep going back to this. This is something we always see. We see it in science fiction. We see it in dramas and fantasies all the time. There's always those two groups that we've been fighting for generations, and no one even knows what the fuck started it anymore, but we're still fighting. And us, the viewer, us on the outside who don't have any skin in the game, are always like, would you guys just stop and forgive each other and move the fuck on? Like, you can't keep fighting over this old bullshit. All it's going to do is just keep perpetually going on and on and on. And look, I believe in a Palestinian free state. But I will not say the chant that's currently going around out in public like an idiot. That chant is associated with anti-Semitism to the highest fucking degree. That chant is associated with people who want to destroy the Israeli government entirely and displace, at best, not just fucking genocide them, but displace millions of Jewish people back to the country they came from. Okay, I guess you're not a fan of the Dreamers. Okay, I guess you think everybody in the US should be deported to their country of origin. Good luck finding that out. I don't even know where I'm from. What are we going to do? Have everybody do a genetics test? Find out, you're mostly German, so you have to go to Germany now. Like, that doesn't make sense. But what if your wife isn't, right? What if you are mostly German and she's mostly Irish? Oh, no, you guys can't live together. You got to go. You know, she's got to go to Ireland. You've got to go to Germany. Nah, tough shit. Like, where do you draw the line? Do you see how stupid this whole thing is? It's all ridiculous, and all I'm trying to say is, look, there are plenty of ways to say that Palestine should be free. The Palestinian people deserve the same rights as the Israeli people to self-determine their own government, their own freedom. And if, as a government, they decide they want to be kings or empires and they want to start war with fucking everybody, that's their business. That's self-determination. Okay? That's kind of my issue with, like, Ukraine right now. How could you be in support of Ukraine, but not in support of everything else? It's like, do we not believe in self-determination? I thought that was a thing. Now, a lot of people on the left are really pissed off at Ukraine because, yeah, they believe in self-determination, but they're just going to pick the capitalist way anyway. And it's like, that's their fucking choice. They had decades and decades of communism. They decided it wasn't for them. Maybe they'll come back around one day and say, you know, actually, some things were pretty good. But until then, we have to let them decide their own fate. Russia, right now, the easiest thing in the world would be, I think, to just launch a missile up Putin's ass. Remove him. Let the rest of Russia do its thing. But you have to understand, there are millions of citizens in Russia today who have nothing to do with what Putin is doing. It's not fair to judge them because of him. It's not fair to judge the Iraqi people because of Saddam Hussein. It's not fair to judge the Israeli people because of Benjamin Netanyahu. It's not fair to judge us if you don't like our current president. Okay? Would it be okay with you if Trump wins in 24, and let's say he wins because the House is bullshit, because that's its own thing, right? The House goes ahead and decides, we're going to buck the system, we're going to give it to Trump even though he lost. And then Trump's president. And some other country is like, that's not fucking right. And so they start bombing all of our major cities. Cities he's not even fucking in. They bomb Chicago and New York and Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Houston, all of them. Why? Because of one person being our fucking president. Because one asshole. When if you look at any demographic, you can see this country split right down the middle. But missiles and rockets don't give a fuck. You can't tell me that the slaughter of innocent kids over there is fair or good. You have no idea what their upbringing is. Think of it this way. We all try to raise our kids to be the best they can, right? You believe that. I believe that. Why don't we think that of the Israeli people? There are plenty of Israelis living over there right now who believe what's happening to the Palestinian people is wrong. And maybe they had a little girl and they took her to the park one fucking day on October 7th and they were raising her. Hey, those people over that fence, that's fucked up what's going on over there. They don't deserve that. And when you grow up, you should do everything in your power to help them. But then Hamas shows up and fucking kills you all. Or maybe she doesn't die. Maybe instead, she sees the very people her parents were trying to advocate for murder them right in front of her. And then she grows up with two conflicting thoughts. Instead of just being a pure ideological thought of what's going on over there is wrong, she has to balance that with, my parents were killed by those assholes. I mean, what do you think is happening? One of the big reasons why we don't want to go to war for unjust reasons is because it tends to create more fucking terrorists. We're really bad at this as human beings, not as Americans or Israelis or anyone else, just as human beings. The more you kill, the more you propagate the problem. So I really don't see it. And I've got to tell you, like, if someone explains to you, hey, that phrase means something other than what you are fucking saying, that phrase is code. Don't you get it? And I know we're not all stupid, because this is the same left that understands that when Fox News says a random black man who was killed by the police is a thug, they know that that's code. So I know they're smart enough to know code when they hear it. And it's possible they just don't know it, but unfortunately that particular group I saw knew damn well what they were doing and are totally okay with it, and that's why I removed them from my, subscribe list. Okay? First and Second Thought ended their most recent news post with a picture with the phrase and slogan. So I stopped. I was a partisan, or not a part. I was a patron. I went ahead and gave them a couple bucks every month because I liked what they had to say. And amazingly, their entire news thing, was talking about the horrible things that were happening in Gaza, which are 100% accurate. They're horrible things. The Israeli government is committing atrocities over there. They didn't have to add that at the end, but they did. And I know they're not stupid, so they know that has mixed messages. And what I'm saying is, if your message is mixed, you need to fucking dump it. Get rid of it. Why even have the chance of being associated with killing kids? Right? Am I crazy? I mean, the only thing I can think of is that none of these people have kids. None of them do. And they can't possibly imagine. They have no empathy at all for human beings. Okay? It's mind-boggling to me. It really is. I mean, it's kind of like what I say to the Second Amendment people. Every time there's a school shooting, I'm thinking, you always have those Second Amendment people going, well, that's the cost of freedom. And my response to them is okay, fine, go take your kid out back and kill him. Go ahead, do it. Sacrifice your kid for the Second Amendment. And that's just what I'm thinking when I hear other people say that killing kids is okay. It's okay, you believe in it so much, take your kid out back, go do what needs to be done. Prove that you are for the cause. Do it to your own kid, not somebody else's. Go do it to your own. What the hell's wrong with you? I just don't get it. It's a complete break from humanity, and what really bothers me is that this is from the side of the aisle that I thought I was a part of. This was a group of people who I thought wanted to move past it. They saw socialism. They saw all the horrible things. I mean, prior to this week, I thought they saw all the horrible things that happened under Mao and Stalin and everyone else. And they didn't try to justify them. They were like, yeah, mistakes were made. We can do better. And personally, I'm okay with that because there are plenty of people who support capitalism despite all the bullshit mistakes it makes. And they're still like, nope, we're trying to make it better. Okay, well, if those people are allowed to exist, I think people can look at communism or socialism and say, we can do better. But this is one of those things where all of a sudden it's not just, and again, I'm pro-Palestine, two-state solution, absolutely. The destruction of another country, forced resettlement of a people. I mean, seriously, again, ask yourself what would happen if it were over here. We have real-life situations where we do not blame the people who are here when they were brought here as children or they were born here. We don't do that here. Why do we do it over there? The hypocrisy is astounding. Anyway, yeah, I don't get it.